Hey, Steve, we can watch all the lines we want, but we really need to know about the pre-order trends in general. And some of your colleagues on the street argue this one's pretty good, at least on the 11. What do you think?
I think it's a good iteration. I mean, you're not going to see a huge amount of innovation, but the camera is very important, particularly to millennials. I should point out that now that I'm tech strategist, my colleague Andrew Vodheim is lead on Apple, but we're still looking for a slight decline in Apple iPhone revenue the next 12 months. That means that the growth really comes from services and wearables. But I think they've done a nice job. You don't hear too much bickering about the product this year. The pricing, they were a little more aggressive on pricing. They're starting to regain a little share in China again. So I think they're in relatively good shape and set up for probably a stronger cycle with 5G a year from now.
Farhad, it's a bit of a circus in Midtown, as our pictures are showing. Reuters has some images from the Beijing, Shanghai locations where they argue we haven't seen the people queue up as we have in prior cycles. How much does that matter?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how much the not lining up matters. I mean, it may indicate just some of like the ultra die-hard fans, but you know, there's other ways to buy it, so I'm not sure. But you're right. I mean, China is the big question for Apple for this model. You know, there have been all kinds of not only like trade pressures, but just kind of the iPhone may be just less attractive over time in the Chinese market that is, you know, all otherwise based on Android, which it does really well there. And you know, a lot of cheaper Android phones, Huawei and Samsung do well there. It's a question. To me personally, I think I like these new models. You know, I think it was very smart to go with focusing. You know, most of the improvements on the camera, and they're really good improvements. I mean, it's an amazing camera, and I've bought every iPhone for the last several years. I think maybe all of them, and I plan to get this one too because I just need that better camera.
Steve, you got a $220 price target. Your firm does, I believe, on Apple. Apple's trading above that today, and I might argue this cycle, China's the only market that really matters because they're rolling out 5G pretty early. A lot of Chinese manufacturers are going to have 5G phones. Apple does not have a 5G iPhone. How much do you think that matters?
Well, first of all, Carl, on the valuation, the stock's now at about a market multiple, which I think is fair. I think if they show that they can continue services growth, maybe the multiple can improve over time, but we think it's at near fair value. You know, regarding China and 5G, I think that's a bit overplayed at this point. 5G, even next year, probably won't give you that much incremental capability in a phone. I mean, the network's a bit faster, but the real benefit of 5G is beyond phones. It's Internet of Things and so forth. Nevertheless, I do think it's going to be a big deal next year, just from a marketing standpoint. The carriers are going to push it in a big way. Now, in China, maybe Apple's behind a little bit relative to Huawei, but actually early in the year, Apple was losing a lot of share in China, but then they reduced prices. They've got these new phones out. They've actually been regaining some share in China. Huawei, of course, has a lot of problems, generally speaking, outside of China at this point. So I feel like Apple's market share around the world, and perhaps in China as well, is in fairly good shape.